Jake is a simple man making his way through the JavaScript galaxy. Maybe a few of you can relate with that. Jake is Utah born and Utah raised, a front-end engineer at heart who's been in management land for a while. Jake is the current VP of engineering at Leland. Jake's talk will be front-end ownership in 2025. Give a round of applause for Jake.
Thank you. Hey, you guys are all still here. Good for you. Friday afternoon on a beautiful day outside. Hopefully this is worth your time. Ownership. That's what we're going to talk about today. I titled it More Technical Philosophy because I started working on this and thinking about this and having lots of conversations, and I got way more interested in some of like the definition space and stuff. So it's not quite as tactical as I originally intended it, but we'll see what we get to and what time we have. So the question that I found interesting is, what is ownership? And the reason I found this interesting is I've built engineering teams at 4 different startups now locally. I've hired a lot of engineers. I should count, so I say a number that sounds more impressive or exact. But I've hired a lot of engineers, and I'm very proud of the teams and the companies and the products that I've built. And one thing that comes up very frequently on every interview call with engineering is they'll be like, oh, I'm looking for more ownership. I'm looking for more ownership opportunities. And I'm like, great. What does that mean? And I think the question of what is ownership is really interesting. So I went and the last couple of weeks, I've had the opportunity to like go to some engineering manager type meetups, which are very thrilling and exciting. If you're looking to have a really good time on like a Wednesday evening, and if you want to come, let me know. We'll get you invited. They're kind of invite only. And I went to these people and I'm like, what does ownership mean to you at your companies? And these are leaders at a lot of the best, hottest startups, largest companies everywhere in like the Salt Lake and Utah counties. And it was fascinating to see the range of answers, the range of thoughts around what people mean when they say ownership and what ownership might mean at one company versus another. And so I started to put together some of like the most common themes around what ownership means. And I've read the books like Extreme Ownership and listened to the podcasts and done a bunch of stuff like that. So this is what I've kind of come up with, which is the first thing that a lot of people go to is like ownership is accountability. Owners are held accountable. And that's like, great. Accountability. I own something, I'm accountable for it. And the other side of accountability is like responsibility for something, which is accountability in my mind is like, oh, I get in trouble if it's not done. Responsibility is like, I need to do things to ensure its success. I have a duty to whatever this sphere of influence is. Generally, ownership implies of something. So there's some sort of domain or boundary or area that I have ownership over. That's another common theme. And then the next one is like, this one came out surprisingly often from both engineers who I've interviewed and leadership is like, ownership is actually when you have the opportunity to fail. And I'm like, okay. And these are the most common ones. And I look at that list and I'm like, why would anyone want ownership? I don't want more accountability. I don't like it. Responsibility sounds like work. Potential to fail, I don't want to do that. But everyone says they want more ownership. And then so it's like you try to like, well, what are the more positive sides of ownership? And obviously there's some that come to mind. One thing that jumps out is people want more autonomy, right? Ownership implies I have the ability to like choose my own adventure a little bit within this sphere. And people get very excited about that. I think there's a lot of research that's like one of the main drivers on like engagement in the workplace. A lot of people talk about, hey, I want to make a bigger impact, or I want to have more control, or I want to have more influence. And I think that is a very common thing in careers, especially with people who have never been in leadership positions. They definitely want to go try their hand at it often, and that's great. Then there's like, someone summed it up really well, and they said, I think ownership is about the idea that I can make the decisions. That's what really excites most people. They're tired of other people making decisions they don't agree with. They want to be the person that makes the decision. And maybe that's very closely related to autonomy, where in my mind, autonomy is more as you're navigating where you want to go, and decision making is like, I got to make the call between A and B. I'm the owner. This is my call. And then another thing that came up very often is like, well, there's just like this intrinsic motivation of like significance of like, I own this thing. What's up, Nick? I feel good about owning it. It has this inherent drive for me, and I love it. And I think all of this is good, but I actually don't think people are actually being honest a lot of the time when they say they want more ownership opportunities. And I think most people, when they're looking for jobs, if I apply my own lens to it, they're interested in that phrase, right? Ownership opportunities. And what they really are excited about is the second part of it, which is opportunity. And a lot of people, when they think of ownership, they kind of glaze past all of that kind of accountability, unpleasant stuff, and they're like, it's opportunity. And so I've noticed this divide between people that are looking for roles and people who are servicing roles, and what companies mean and what interviewers mean, and they're both using this same term, ownership. And I've come to realize that for a lot of people, when you're applying to a role, you're like, hey, ownership means I'll get to make decisions and then I'll probably make more money because that's what opportunity is. And companies are often thinking, yeah, we'll let you be more accountable and you'll probably work more if you're the owner of this thing. And I think that there's a divide that develops that people don't even realize in the conversation, that they're actually talking about two different aspects of opportunity. And I think this leads to a lot of people walking into a new role or taking on a new challenge or talking to a new company, and you're using the same words and you actually don't know what each other are saying and what's going to make a successful relationship. And so this was one of my summations of an interesting discovery along this ownership conversation and journey. And so I think the first thing, if there's any like takeaways from this talk, which is, again, at the end of the day, is I would invest in having a clear understanding of what ownership means at your company or next company. I think this is time very well spent, and I think it's a very intuitive question. If someone asked me this during an interview, I would love the question, because I could tell they're thinking like an owner already, because they want to make sure they're a successful owner at our company, and they're have enough emotional intelligence to know that ownership, turns out, it differs from a lot of places. So here's a thought. Maybe this one thought is all you remember, and it has value for you moving forward. So Leland is hiring, and I run engineering at Leland. It's an amazing startup in Lehigh. We're on site. We're doing cool stuff. Great. You should come talk to me if you want a job. I'm looking for a great front-end engineer, but this is not what it's about. The thing is, people often turn my question back on me, right? It's like, what is opportunity? Let's wax philosophical. And they come back and say, all right, well, you're asking, you seem to care about ownership. What does that mean? What does that mean at Leland? What does that mean on your teams? And I'm like, I'm ready for this answer. And I quickly go through, and this is not meant to be a sales pitch, by the way. I hope you're all very happy at your careers. But I go through and I explain exactly what I mean when I say ownership as it comes to a job function at Leland. And I'm going to spin through that really fast. I've developed this talk track that I really want everyone who talks to Leland to understand what I mean when I say ownership. And I call it full spectrum technical ownership. And I do this for everyone, from junior to principal to seniors to managers. Everyone is an owner. And this is what I mean by it here, which is like, hey, you own the problems. You work with product to figure out, after a problem is prioritized, to understand it. Then you help own thinking of the right solutions. We call it solutioning. Once you've created alignment on the right solution with leadership and stakeholders, you now own like the execution of it, so like making tickets, making sure people that are working and contributing to the solution with you, you got to make sure they're effective. We don't have a QA department, so you get to own that too. You get to own your own quality and own your risk on what you choose to ship and what you don't choose to ship. Followed closely after what you choose to ship is, hey, you get to own the support and maintenance for that stuff, at least within a launch window. Eventually it will transition to not your owners. And then I think this is one we'll talk about a lot. It's actually on this side. I want engineers to own measurement and advocacy. I want you to care about what you built. I want you to be thoughtful to measure its success, and I want you to advocate for it or not around if it deserves more investment. And that is like a big spectrum of ownership. And that is the answer I give people when actually they don't ask, I wish they'd ask more. This is the answer that I tell people what I mean about ownership during an interview process. And so I want to see if you all will oh wait, sorry, this is the next part. I'll talk about it next. And then this is how I follow up on the opportunity framework, which is me as the VP of engineering or your manager. I'm going to line up ownership opportunities for you. I promise you I will do this. I'm going to help you be successful. Your job as the owner, stack those wins. You keep knocking out these ownership opportunities to be successful, and then together we'll figure out the right outcomes. Generally, do you want to get to management track? Great, I'll line up opportunities for you to get there. You want to get a raise? Let me line up opportunities for you to get there. And we work on the right outcomes for you together. And this makes me feel pretty good as a manager and as a leader. People seem to like it. And people on interviews turns out like, oh, that's very clear. Thank you. But I want to ask real fast if you would give me some accountability. I joked about not wanting any of it, but maybe I'll take a little bit of it here. What did you think? Was that a successful definition of ownership? Did that paint a clear enough picture to what success as an owner would look like at Leland? Amy said yes, so I'm feeling pretty good. Some thumbs up in the back. Oh yeah, let's go. All right, so I actually thought it was until I started having all these philosophical debates. And I realized you could do each one of those steps I outlined in a way that doesn't make you a good owner, at least not a successful owner. And I was like, I realized I've been describing the functions or aspects or responsibilities of a job of ownership, but not like what ownership or what a mentality is. And I realized that's the key piece I was missing. So then I started really leaning into what is the ownership mindset? It's not just the job responsibilities, it's the mindset. And this is where I felt like I could maybe have the best contribution to the theme of this conference, which is learn, leverage, and master. Because I think a mindset and the right mindset is going to create the most leverage for you in your career, no matter what you're going to try to do. And so I'm very interested all the time of see if we can get people in the right mindset, they will likely be successful. And so I started diving into what is the ownership mindset that I think you need to have to do those functions to be successful at Leland. This led to another round of philosophical thoughts around what is an ownership mindset and how is that different from the responsibilities of an owner. And I don't know if I found a concrete answer out there that's universal, which is great, because then we can debate it, and I love it. So this is my best attempt at trying to find aspects of an ownership mentality that made sense to me, having all these other conversations. And the first one is a basketball coach. I forget his name right now. Apparently he's holding a net. That means he was successful. And he had this great quote about college basketball, which is something like, freshmen want to play, sophomores want to start, juniors want to score points, seniors just want to win. And I thought, someone told me this as I was debating them on ownership mentality, and it was so good. This was a director of engineering at Weave. Shout out to Weave, great local company. I loved that because it's the mindset of those seniors that they just want to win. And I'm like, those are always the leaders on your sports teams. And that's actually what I think is a huge aspect of an ownership mentality is you're just focused on winning. You're less focused on me or points or outcomes or those opportunities. And that's a big part of, I think, what I think ownership mentality should be. The next is the GOAT of all Spider-Men, Tobey Maguire. If you saw that first one, it was quite formative for some of us. I guess I'm old enough. Most of my engineers on my team now don't even know this. But hey, with great power comes great responsibility is the quote they keep saying over and over in that movie. And I think Spider-Man is an interesting example because he just makes his neighborhood better. He's like, I can go improve things, and he makes things better. And he's a superhero, and he realizes he has this responsibility, and he takes it seriously. Versus being assigned. No one came to him and said, hey, you need to do these things. He just made it better. The next is a guy that is way overhated. I mean, this is just a tomato lover doing his best. He is a steward of Gondor from the Lord of the Rings movies. And I think stewardship is such a great thing. And then there's that quote from Lord of the Rings movies where they say, Gondor has no king, Gondor needs no king. And I'm like, yeah, I think that's actually a pretty great ownership mentality. I think there's a common thought where people are like, I'm the owner of this thing. This is my kingdom, not just my domain, and I shall dictate the rules here. And I think that is going to inevitably lead to a failure of ownership. And so I think stewardship is the main takeaway there. And then I don't know a whole lot about biology or anatomy. I try to skip all of that. I could. But I think the concept here that also came out to me that's very important is like you have all these vital organs that are important for staying alive. And even if, say, your ownership is of the pancreas, that's a good one. And if you do a pristine job and your pancreas is very successful, but the brain dies or the heart dies, you're in trouble. So it's kind of this broader mindset around ownership mentality of seeing the success of what you're working on is dependent on way more than your area of ownership. In fact, the area of your ownership is dependent on the areas of the rest of the company's or functions or businesses' ownership. And so I took these kind of, I think, the 4 most powerful examples and thoughts I could, and I put them into the next takeaway, which everyone should memorize, which is ownership means think like a senior superhero who is stewarding the success of not just the neighborhood, but the planet. And that is very clear for everyone to remember and understand. That was a poor joke. Thanks for the humor. But I tried to come up with my own like summation of what Jake Lingwall would say ownership is at Leland. And it's like, hey, ownership is actively ensuring the future success of your sphere of influence, knowing that your success is bound to everyone beyond your sphere and extends beyond your direct stewardship. So if I want you to be the owner of something, I want you to make sure that you're going to make that successful in a way that makes all of us successful. And you want this thing to be successful once you're no longer the steward of it. And I think that is a very complex way to say it. I think I'm going to get it simpler over the years. But that's like my starting point of like where I originated my own personal concept of what ownership mentality means. And if you were to talk in this room a few sessions ago, Lucas, he talked about ownership as well. And his thought would be like, hey, someone should do something about this. You know, why not me? What if it was me? And then he honed in on like creator and product mentalities engineering. I love that he came up with his own definition of like ownership mentality and what ownership means. And so actually, the next takeaway is I think it's worth your time to take a few minutes and try to define your ownership mentality. And the important thing to do there is that then you'll understand what you mean, and then you'll use that to understand when you're talking to anyone else in any other place, if there's alignment between your ownership mentality and what you want ownership to entail from a function to what the company expects. And I think this alignment exercise is going to provide a huge amount of dividends to you personally. You'll be more successful in pursuing those opportunities, and everyone will be happier. So the first one, takeaway, I don't even remember now. Hopefully you remember it. Takeaway 2 is this. So I know this was like the philosophical side. I wanted to bring it a bit down to like, well, what does that mean in like engineering? What does it mean in JavaScript? I'm a front-end engineer by trade. I still write a lot of front-end code on a daily basis. I love doing that. I'm currently still trying to finish off a migration from Pages Router to App Router, and that has been so much fun. I don't know, the type of fun that, yeah, you guys get it. Anyways, so how do we think about that ownership mentality and the ownership functions as it applies to like common front-end specific ownership, if that's the audience we have? So these are some things that I like to do when I've done architecture for a few companies, and then I've written my own code on front end. I think this is like the right way to think about owning the front end. If you're like the architect, and ownership can be anyone. I think it needs to be contributable, right? Like, I don't think you should make just good owners, at least with my mindset, and you should apply your own answers to these questions. Don't make decisions that close off your sphere to others. It's like the don't touch mentality is like the opposite, because it's not stewardship. So put effort into making your code base contributable. Make it easy for people to help improve it or come in and work in it. Don't put in effort to close it off and keep people out. I think it's got to be integrated. It's another way of saying it. I think when I'm writing front-end code and say I just have like a feature or something, I want to make sure my feature as an owner is integrated into the core flows of the product. It's touching. It's not a terminal point. I want to help guide this front-end experience I've built, so it's not the ending. I think successful front-end owners are like the closest engineers that get to like empathy for the users, and that is like a superpower for every engineer I've ever worked with who is like the champion of users are so successful and so powerful. And so I think front end if you're owning your front end, you've got to create patterns and practices that benefit the user, and that's where you need to be focused. DevX is tempting, it's important. Definitely you've got to invest in it, but I would invest in it in a way to just help the users. So if you have a developer experience that's keeping you from helping users, you should invest in that and make it better. If you're applying this, I think measurable is a huge aspect of what ownership should be in all aspects, but also as it relates to the front end. Everyone loves data, and you should love data. On the front end, we have a chance right now to be more data-driven than ever. Like if you're using a consumer app like we do, like page speed performance, accessibility, all those things are super important. You have the classic like build time, bundle sizes, all those things. A lot of engineers will be like, oh, all right, we'll add analytics when a product owner or someone tells me what analytics to add to like events. And I'm like, that is such a missed opportunity as an owner. Like you want to make sure that your instrumentation of analytics and measurement is something that you're excited about and can own. And like when you're building something, you're like, this is something I would want to measure because I want to know if this component is more effective than the last one. Like I'm going to own my own data thoughts around this. I think this will be very successful for you if you take that mindset. I think simple, all well. A great owner of anything on the front end code base creates simple things. Make it easy to do the right thing. Complexity is a smell. Generally speaking, if you have a product requirements that is very hard to understand, there's probably a way to partner with them as a technical owner and make it simple, and then the solutions and the code you write and you put into your code base, making them simple will pay great dividends. Generally, if you're looking at a component and it feels very hard, there's probably something wrong with it. I think you can make it simpler. And I think great owners help drive that through. And then the last thing is I think it's supported from a front-end experience, and I've been doing this long enough now. We didn't have great tools in the past, but we've got some really cool stuff now, right? Like you should have logs. You should see errors that come in, even from the client side. You can use, there's 8 million of them, Sentry, Datadog, Rollbar, whatever you want. Get telemetry on where things are going slow. Write good documentation. Make sure someone is supporting this thing. If you work at something really small and you don't have on-call, great. If you're working at a place where on-call has been thrust upon you, great. Embrace it, do your best, make it better. Frameworks and libraries, make the right choices in the mindset of applying my personal ownership mentality of I want this thing to be successful after I'm gone. I don't want to make a choice of a framework or a library that only I know or only I like. I want to make one that is for the good of the code base even after I'm no longer the steward of it. So being thoughtfully proactive around how to support your stuff goes a long way. So these are some of what I think successful ownership of a front-end code base looks like, and there's a lot to do here, and it's a big challenge, and that's why I think it's a big opportunity. So this is my last kind of takeaway thing or something I encourage you all to think about, which is if you're the owner of anything, write down in a line on what the future success of your sphere of influence means at your company. It's an exercise that might feel funny, but if you do that and then you start talking to your managers or your leaders or your stakeholders about it, I think you're going to have a lot of very interesting conversations that will provide a lot of clarity on kind of your standing in their future and the thoughts all around. And so I would recommend you do that and those three things. Within the next 3 minutes, I had a bunch of these, which are kind of more thought experiment examples around things or questions that come up around technical ownership. And if you've developed your own ownership mentality or mindset already, you could try to apply how you would answer these things to yourself. And I'm just going to run through as much of them as I can in the next 2 minutes and 45 seconds because I will never keep anyone late on a Friday. It wouldn't be me. So, someone comes to me and say, hey, I want a vibe code in your code base. I was like, actually, I don't want you to do that. That scares me very much. But let me think, because I want this to be contributable, let me think of ways that I can scratch that itch or safe ways that I can let you do that. And one example that I did recently was great, you want to have a vibe-coded experiment of a widget. Let me create a way to kind of safely iframe in your widget and it uses our component libraries. So it's isolated, it's encapsulated, but you can still learn from it. We can all get what we want. And that's just a little bit of effort. And I think things like that go a long way. So instead of saying, no, you can't do it, try to find a way to enable people to do it. Hey, owner, can we use that new sexy language framework library? This usually comes from other engineers within your area of influence or sphere. A lot of people will be like, oh, you should say no, do a bit practical. You might be at a business where it actually makes the right sense in your ownership mentality to invest and sell and be on the cutting edge. You probably not, but you might be. You should think about how your ownership mentality, what ownership means at your company, how you apply those things. We have yet another, I should frame these questions better, they're a little leading. Hey, we have another feature request. Can you just get that in? And it's like, well, maybe you should be like, hey, is this a simple thing? We said we aligned on ownership here. My job is to help make things simple. That was the agreement we had. This doesn't feel simple. We want a slight variation of that component we created. Man, that one's got me a lot over my years, where you end up with 40 different button variations in the component library you're matching. And you're like, well, is that the simple thing? Is this helping the component library be successful for me after I'm gone? The answer is probably no. So be a good owner. That sometimes means saying no. This one is my, hey, should we ship this thing today? Or especially on a Friday. People always make the joke we should never ship on Friday. Or, let's push it out on Friday. And I'm like, hell yeah, let's do it. I'm an owner. I'm willing to stand by that. I'm willing to own that risk. I like to ship on Fridays. Sometimes my wife doesn't like those choices I make. But anyways, I'll run through these real fast and we'll end on time. I wish we knew how this thing was launched was doing. I'm an engineer. We built this. I don't even know how it's doing. No one's telling me. I'm like, hey, if you're an owner, shouldn't you know how your own stuff's doing? Shouldn't you know where the data is? Shouldn't you be help gathering it? Shouldn't you answer that question yourself? This broader initiative needs help. Go help other people. All right, I'm going to skip through the rest of these. They're not that interesting. Hopefully you get the gist. Take the ownership definition and mentality and apply it to stuff. I'm Jake Lingwall. I'm very not hard to find. If I can help you be an owner or a leader in any way, let me know. Otherwise, thank you for listening. It's been a pleasure. Great conference. Thank you, everyone, who helped put it together, and have a great weekend.